I've always believed that trust is like a glass vase. Beautiful, delicate, and once shattered, nearly impossible to piece back together without seeing the cracks. My name is Daniel Harper, and for 15 years, I thought my marriage to Elise was that vase, pristine and unbreakable. We built a life together in the quiet suburbs of Portland, Oregon. A life filled with routine but also with love, or so I believed. Our 2 kids, Mia and Ethan, were the glue that held our days together, their laughter echoing through our modest 2-story home. I worked as a structural engineer, spending long hours designing bridges and buildings, while Elise ran a small bakery downtown, her hands always dusted with flour, her smile warm as the croissants she baked. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and I thought it was enough. That belief began to fray on a rainy Tuesday in October, though I didn't know it at the time. The Pacific Northwest drizzle had settled over the city like a heavy blanket, and I was stuck in the office, poring over blueprints for a new suspension bridge. My phone buzzed on the desk, a text from Elise. Asterisk running late at the bakery. Can you grab the kids from soccer? Asterisk I sighed, rubbing my temples. It wasn't unusual. Her bakery had been busier than ever since she started offering custom cakes for weddings and birthdays. I texted back a quick sure and packed up my things, grateful for an excuse to leave the office early. When I pulled up to the soccer field, Mia and Ethan were already waiting, their cleats muddy, their faces flushed from running. Dad, you're late. Mia, my 12-year-old, teased, tossing her ponytail as she climbed into the back seat. Ethan, 2 years younger, just grinned and shoved his sister playfully. I apologized, blaming traffic, and we drove home, the kids chattering about their day. It was a normal evening, or so it seemed. Dinner was takeout pizza because Elise wasn't home yet, and I helped the kids with homework before tucking them into bed. By the time Elise's headlights swept across the driveway at 10:47 p.m., I was half asleep on the couch, a glass of bourbon in my hand. Hey, you're still up? She said softly as she slipped through the door, her coat damp from the rain. Her auburn hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she looked exhausted, her green eyes heavy-lidded. I smiled, setting the glass down. Long day? I asked, standing to kiss her cheek. She smelled faintly of vanilla and something else, something sharp like citrus. It wasn't her usual scent, but I brushed it off. She was always experimenting with new recipes at the bakery. Insane, she said, dropping her bag on the counter. A bride came in last minute, wanted a 3-tier cake for Saturday. I had to stay and figure out the logistics. She yawned, stretching her arms. I'm beat. Mind if I shower and crash? Go for it, I said, waving her off. As she disappeared upstairs, I cleaned up the kitchen, rinsing my glass and wiping down the counter. That's when I noticed her phone, half buried under her scarf on the counter. It buzzed, the screen lighting up with a notification. I didn't mean to look. Honest to God, I wasn't that kind of husband, but the name on the screen caught my eye. Jasper. No last name, just Jasper, followed by a message that read, Asterisk missed you tonight. Same time tomorrow. Asterisk. My stomach twisted. A cold, unfamiliar knot forming. Jasper. I didn't know any Jasper. Was he a supplier? A customer? I stood there, staring at the phone, my heart thudding in my chest. I could have unlocked it. Elise used the same passcode for everything, our anniversary 0614, but I didn't. Not then. Instead, I turned off the kitchen light and went upstairs, where the sound of the shower hissed through the bathroom door. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Just a friend. Just a coworker. Just something innocent. But the knot in my stomach didn't loosen. Over the next few days, I started noticing things I hadn't before. Elise was distracted, her eyes darting to her phone more often than usual. She'd laugh at messages when she thought I wasn't looking, her fingers flying over the screen. She started staying late at the bakery 3, sometimes 4 nights a week, always with a plausible excuse. A big order, a new client, a broken oven. I wanted to believe her. I did. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew like a weed, choking out my rational thoughts. One night, After the kids were asleep, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until Elise was in the shower again. She'd been taking a lot of showers lately, I realized, and I picked up her phone. My hands shook as I typed in 0614. The screen unlocked, and I opened her messages. There it was, a thread with Jasper. I scrolled, my breath catching as I read. Asterisk Jasper, you looked incredible today. Can't stop thinking about you. Asterisk. Asterisk Elise, you're bad for me. But I like it. Asterisk. Asterisk Jasper. Tomorrow at the loft? 7. Asterisk. Asterisk Elise. I'll be there. Don't be late. Asterisk. There were more, dozens of messages, some flirty, some explicit in ways that made my vision blur. My knees buckled, and I sank onto the couch, the phone trembling in my hand. The loft. I knew the place. A small apartment above the bakery that Elise used for storage and occasional meetings with clients. I'd been there a handful of times, helping her move boxes or set up for tastings. It was cozy, with exposed brick walls and a view of the city. Apparently, it was also something else. I don't know how long I sat there, the phone burning in my palm. The shower shut off upstairs, and I heard Elise humming softly, oblivious to the storm brewing in my chest. I locked the phone and set it back on the counter, exactly where she'd left it. I didn't confront her that night. Couldn't. My mind was a whirlwind of questions and images I didn't want to see. Who was Jasper? How long had this been going on? Was it just physical? Or was it more? The thought of her sharing her heart with someone else hurt more than the idea of her body being touched by another man. The next day, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus on blueprints when my life was crumbling. Instead, I drove to the bakery, parking across the street in a spot where I could see the entrance without being noticed. Elise's car was there, parked next to a sleek black motorcycle I didn't recognize. My heart sank. At 6:45 p.m., a man walked out of the bakery, his leather jacket slung over one shoulder. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a swagger that made my fists clench. He glanced around, then climbed the exterior stairs to the loft. 5 minutes later, Elise followed, her hair loose, her steps quick and purposeful. I didn't move. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, watching the loft's window. The light flickered on, then off. I didn't need to see more to know what was happening. My wife, my Elise, was up there with him. The woman who'd promised to love me forever, who'd laughed with me over burnt dinners and cried with me when we lost our first pregnancy, was giving herself to someone else. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't let this go on. I spent the next week gathering evidence, though every piece felt like a knife in my chest. I checked her phone again when she was asleep, taking screenshots of the messages. I found receipts in her purse for dinners I hadn't been invited to, at restaurants we'd never gone to together. I even hacked into her bakery's security system, something I'd helped her set up years ago, and found footage of her and Jasper in the loft, their bodies tangled together on a couch I'd carried up those stairs myself. Each discovery was a blow, but I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to understand the full scope of her betrayal, to know who this Jasper was and why she'd chosen him over me. I started digging. His full name was Jasper Callahan, a freelance photographer who'd done a shoot for the bakery's website 6 months ago. That's how they met, I realized. He was 32, 10 years younger than me, with a reputation for charming his way through Portland's creative scene. His Instagram was full of moody black and white photos, some of them featuring Elise, her laughing, her hands covered in dough, her eyes sparkling in a way I hadn't seen in years. The more I learned, the more my pain turned to anger. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a deliberate, ongoing choice. She was living a double life, lying to my face every day while I took care of our kids and our home. I thought about confronting her, about storming into the loft and dragging Jasper out by his leather jacket. But that wasn't enough. I didn't just want to end it. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. I wanted her to hurt the way I was hurting. I started planning. I didn't know what form my revenge would take, but I knew it had to be precise, calculated, and devastating. I spent hours at night, after Elise was asleep, researching Jasper's life. He had a small studio downtown, a loft apartment in the Pearl District, and a string of ex-girlfriends who'd left bitter comments on his social media. He was a man who thrived on attention, who used his charm like a weapon. I hated him, but I hated Elise more. Not for what she'd done, but for how easily she'd thrown away everything we'd built. By the end of the week, I had a plan. It wasn't violent or illegal, but it was cruel in its own way. I wanted to expose her, to strip away the facade she'd created and show the world who she really was. I wanted Jasper to lose his reputation, his clients, his smug confidence. And I wanted Elise to face the consequences of her choices, not just in our marriage but in every part of her life. The bakery, her pride and joy, would be my starting point. I'd helped her build it, after all. Every permit, every loan, every late-night repair. I knew its weaknesses better than anyone. As I sat in my car that night, staring at the bakery's darkened windows, I felt a cold resolve settle over me. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about justice. Elise had broken our vows, but I would break something far more precious to her. And I'd make sure she knew why. The days after I confirmed Elise's betrayal were a blur of rage and calculation. A tightrope walk between keeping up appearances and plotting my next move. I woke up each morning with a hollow ache in my chest, but I forced myself to smile through breakfast with Mia and Ethan, to kiss Elise on the cheek before she left for the bakery, to act like the devoted husband I'd always been. It was torture, playing the part while knowing what she was doing behind my back. But I had to bide my time. Revenge, I'd learned, wasn't a sprint, it was a marathon, and I was in it for the long haul. Every step had to be deliberate, every detail perfect. I wasn't just going to confront Elise and Jasper. I was going to dismantle their world, piece by piece, and make sure they felt every fracture. The first step was understanding the battlefield. Elise's bakery, Sweet Haven, was her sanctuary, the place where she poured her heart and soul. It was a cozy, Instagram-worthy spot in Portland's Hawthorne district, with mismatched wooden tables, fairy lights strung across the ceiling, and a chalkboard menu that changed daily. Customers loved it for its warmth, its authenticity, and Elise's knack for making every pastry feel like a hug. But I knew the truth behind the charm. The bakery was a house of cards, propped up by loans, loyal customers, and Elise's reputation. If I could undermine those pillars, the whole thing would collapse, and she'd feel the weight of her choices. I started with Jasper. He was the easier target, a man whose life was built on shallow connections and a carefully curated image. I spent hours digging deeper into his digital footprint, using skills I'd picked up in my engineering days when I'd had to troubleshoot systems and networks. His photography business relied heavily on social media, Instagram, Twitter, a slick website showcasing his portfolio. He'd done shoots for local businesses, musicians, and influencers, but Sweet Haven was his most consistent client. Elise had hired him for monthly content updates, which explained why he was always around. I found his LinkedIn profile, sparse but revealing. He'd bounced between gigs before landing in Portland 3 years ago, and his reviews hinted at a pattern of unprofessional behavior. Missed deadlines, flirty messages to clients, a tendency to overpromise and underdeliver. I created a burner email account and started reaching out to his clients, posing as a concerned business owner who'd heard rumors about Jasper's reliability. I didn't lie outright. I didn't need to. I'd attach screenshots of public complaints from his social media, anonymized to protect myself, and ask if they'd had similar experiences. Within days, I'd stirred up enough doubt that 2 of his bigger clients, a local coffee chain and a boutique clothing store, canceled upcoming shoots. I saw the fallout on his Twitter, where he posted cryptic rants about haters and fake news. It was a small victory, but it felt good to know I'd rattled him. Next, I turned my attention to the bakery's finances. Elise and I had always kept our money separate, a decision we'd made early in our marriage to give her independence with the business. But I'd co-signed the loans for Sweet Haven, which gave me access to the accounts. I spent late nights poring over bank statements, invoices, and tax records, looking for vulnerabilities. The bakery was profitable, but barely. High overhead, rising ingredient costs, and a recent rent increase had stretched the budget thin. Elise had been dipping into our personal savings to cover gaps, something she hadn't told me. It stung, but it also gave me leverage. If the bakery lost customers or faced a sudden expense, it wouldn't take much to push it into the red. I started small, planting seeds of doubt among her customer base. I created a few fake Yelp accounts. Not many, just enough to seem organic, and left reviews that were critical but believable. Complaints about inconsistent quality, long wait times, or a weird vibe from the staff. I knew Elise checked Yelp obsessively, and sure enough, I overheard her venting to a friend about trolls trying to sabotage her business. I kept my face neutral, offering a sympathetic nod while inwardly cataloging her distress. It wasn't enough to ruin her, not yet, but it was a start. The real blow came when I found a way to hit both Elise and Jasper where it hurt most: their reputations. Sweet Haven's biggest asset was its image as a wholesome, community-driven business. Elise was the face of that image, her smile plastered on every promotional flyer, her story of baking with love woven into every interview. Jasper's photos amplified that narrative, turning her pastries into art. If I could taint that image, I could bring them both down. I started by leaking a story to a local food blogger, someone known for digging into Portland's culinary scene. Using another burner email, I sent her a tip about unhygienic practices at Sweet Haven, attaching a doctored photo of the bakery's kitchen with a few strategically placed roaches. The photo was subtle. I'd spent hours in Photoshop making it look real, using images from the bakery's own security footage as a base. The blogger took the bait, posting a scathing article titled, "Is Sweet Haven Hiding a Dirty Secret?" It spread like wildfire on Twitter, with customers tagging Elise and demanding answers. She spent days responding to comments, her voice shaking when she called me from the bakery to vent. "I don't understand, Daniel," she said, her tone frantic. "We've never had a single health violation. This is sabotage." I murmured reassurances, my stomach churning with a mix of guilt and satisfaction. I wasn't done. I sent an anonymous tip to the health department, requesting an urgent inspection based on customer concerns. The inspector showed up unannounced, and while they didn't find roaches, they did cite a few minor violations: expired permits, a leaky sink that Elise had to scramble to fix. The inspection report was public, and the blogger pounced on it, amplifying the narrative that Sweet Haven wasn't what it seemed. Jasper's turn came next. I'd learned he was pitching a big project to a national lifestyle magazine, a feature that could elevate his career. I hacked into his email. Not hard, since he used the same password for everything. I'd guessed it from his social media pet photos, Luna 2020. I found his pitch deck, a glossy PDF showcasing his work, including photos of Elise at the bakery. I replaced a few images with ones that made him look amateurish, blurry shots, poorly lit, clearly not his best work, and sent the altered deck to the magazine editor from his own email. The response was swift, a polite rejection, citing concerns about quality. Jasper's Twitter went quiet for days, and when he resurfaced, his posts were bitter, hinting at betrayal and backstabbers. Through it all, I kept up the facade at home. I cooked dinner, helped with homework, listened to Elise's complaints about the bakery's struggles. She was unraveling, her usual confidence replaced by a nervous energy that made her jump every time her phone buzzed. I noticed she was texting Jasper less, their messages shorter, more strained. They were feeling the pressure, and it was working. But it wasn't enough. I wanted Elise to face me, to admit what she'd done, to see the wreckage she'd caused. And I wanted Jasper to know I was the one pulling the strings. I decided to escalate. I rented a small office space downtown, a nondescript room with a single desk and a burner phone. From there, I set up a fake profile on a local gossip forum, posing as a disgruntled former employee of Sweet Haven. I posted a detailed account of Elise's unprofessional behavior, hinting at an inappropriate relationship with a photographer that was disrupting the workplace. I didn't name Jasper outright, but the details were specific enough: his motorcycle, his leather jacket, that anyone who knew him would make the connection. The post gained traction, shared by locals who loved a juicy scandal. Customers started canceling orders, and Elise's staff began asking questions. She fired one barista for gossiping, not realizing I was the source. The final piece of my plan was personal. I wanted Elise to know I knew, but not yet. Not until the ground was crumbling beneath her. I started leaving subtle hints around the house. A printed screenshot of one of her texts to Jasper, tucked into a book she was reading. A photo of the loft's exterior, slipped into her purse. She didn't mention them, but I saw the fear in her eyes, the way she'd freeze when she thought I wasn't looking. She was starting to suspect, and that was exactly what I wanted. I needed her to feel trapped, to question every move she made, to wonder how much I knew. One night, as we sat on the couch watching a movie with the kids, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then quickly set it face down. I caught the name Jasper, and my blood boiled, but I kept my voice calm. "Everything okay?" I asked, my tone neutral. "Yeah, just work," she said, too quickly. Her hands twisted in her lap, and I knew she was lying. I nodded, pretending to focus on the movie, but my mind was racing. The time for hints was over. I was ready to confront her, but not in the way she expected. I'd spent weeks building a trap, and now it was time to spring it. I wanted her to walk into it willingly, to confess not because I forced her but because she had no other choice. As the kids went to bed and Elise disappeared into the shower, another late-night shower, another lie, I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open. I drafted an email, anonymous but addressed to her, with a single attachment. A video clip from the bakery's security footage, showing her and Jasper in the loft, their bodies pressed together in a way that left no room for excuses. The email read, "Asterisk, you thought no one would find out. You were wrong. Tell him or I will." Asterisk. I didn't send it. Not yet. I saved it to my drafts, my finger hovering over the button. Tomorrow I'd decide. Tomorrow I'd take the next step. For now, I closed the laptop and went to bed, lying beside the woman who'd betrayed me, my heart a furnace of rage and resolve. The end was coming, and I'd make sure it burned. The morning after I drafted the email, the air in our house felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I woke up before Elise, my eyes gritty from a sleepless night spent staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past few weeks. The screenshots, the doctored photos, the anonymous posts, it had all been leading to this. Today was the day I'd pull the final thread and watch Elise's carefully constructed world unravel. But I wasn't just after her confession. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal, to see the life she'd taken for granted collapse around her. And Jasper? He'd get his own reckoning. One that would strip away his charm and leave him exposed for the opportunist he was. I moved through the morning routine like a ghost. I made coffee, packed lunches for Mia and Ethan, and drove them to school, their chatter a distant hum against the storm in my mind. Elise was already gone when I returned, her car absent from the driveway, a note on the counter saying she had an early delivery at the bakery. I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open, the unsent email staring back at me. My finger hovered over the send button, but I hesitated. Sending it now would be too easy, too direct. I wanted her to squirm, to feel the noose tightening before she even saw it. I closed the laptop and grabbed my keys. It was time to set the final pieces in motion. My first stop was the bakery. I parked a block away, blending into the morning crowd of joggers and dog walkers. Sweet Haven was quiet, the neon open sign still dark. I knew Elise would be inside, prepping dough or meeting with suppliers. I also knew Jasper might show up. He'd been coming by more often, despite the tension I'd sown between them. I'd seen it in their messages, the way their flirty banter had turned to arguments about trust and rumors. My campaign was working, but it wasn't enough. I needed to escalate, to make the betrayal public in a way neither of them could escape. I'd spent the previous night finalizing my plan, a multi-pronged attack designed to hit Elise and Jasper where it hurt most. Their reputations, their livelihoods, and their connection to each other. The bakery was the key. Sweet Haven wasn't just Elise's business. It was her identity, the thing that defined her in the eyes of our community. If I could destroy its credibility, I'd destroy her pride. And Jasper, whose photography career depended on his network of local clients, would fall just as hard if I could tie his name to the scandal. I started with a call to the local newspaper, using a prepaid burner phone I'd bought for cash. Posing as a concerned customer, I tipped off their food editor about serious issues at Sweet Haven, suggesting they look into the recent health inspection and the online rumors. I mentioned Jasper by name, hinting at an inappropriate relationship with the owner that was causing drama among the staff. The editor sounded skeptical but promised to dig deeper. That was all I needed, a spark to ignite the gossip mill. Portland's food scene was tight-knit, and word traveled fast. Next, I turned to social media. Using the same fake profiles I'd created for Yelp, I posted on local foodie groups, amplifying the narrative of Sweet Haven's decline. I shared the blogger's article, adding comments about seeing the owner with some guy in the loft and questionable hygiene practices. I was careful not to overdo it. Too many posts from one account would look suspicious, but I seeded enough to keep the conversation alive. By noon, the bakery's Instagram was flooded with questions and complaints, customers demanding to know if the rumors were true. Elisa's responses were frantic, her usual warmth replaced by defensive boilerplate. We take all concerns seriously and are committed to transparency. While the online storm brewed, I drove to Jasper's studio, a small storefront in the Pearl District with his name stenciled on the window. I'd cased the place before, noting its lack of security. No cameras, just a basic lock. I didn't plan to break in, but I wanted to leave a message. I'd printed flyers with a screenshot of Jasper and Elise from the bakery's security footage. Their faces blurred, but their body language unmistakable. The text read, *Jasper Callahan, photographer, mixes business with pleasure. Ask Sweet Haven's owner. *I slipped the flyers under the doors of neighboring businesses, taped a few to streetlights, and left one on Jasper's motorcycle, parked outside. It was petty, but it would hit him where it hurt, his ego and his client base. By the time I returned home, the house was empty, the kids still at school, Elise still at the bakery. I checked my phone and saw the fallout unfolding online. The newspaper had published a short piece, cautiously worded but damning. Local bakery faces scrutiny over health concerns and alleged misconduct. Jasper's Twitter was a mess, with clients tagging him in questions about the flyers. He'd posted a vague denial, * lies spread by jealous competitors. I'm focused on my work *. But the damage was done. His bookings were drying up, and I knew it from the panicked emails I'd intercepted through his hacked account. Elise called me around 3 p.m., her voice shaking. Daniel, have you seen what's happening online? Someone's trying to ruin me. The bakery's getting hate mail, and people are canceling orders left and right. She sounded close to tears, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. This was the woman I'd loved for 15 years, the mother of my children. But then I remembered the messages, the loft, the way she'd laughed with Jasper while lying to my face. The guilt evaporated. That's awful, I said, keeping my tone steady. Do you have any idea who's behind it? No, she said, her voice breaking. But it's personal. Someone knows things, private things. I don't know how they found out. I let the silence hang, letting her words twist in the air. Maybe it's someone you crossed, I suggested, my voice neutral. A disgruntled employee? A competitor? Maybe, she whispered. I don't know what to do. Come home, I said. We'll figure it out together. It was a lie, but she didn't know that. I needed her here, in our house, where I could confront her on my terms. She arrived an hour later, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. The kids were still at after-school activities, giving us the house to ourselves. She dropped her bag on the counter and sank onto the couch, her hands covering her face. I don't understand how this happened, she said. Everything was fine, and now it's all falling apart. I sat across from her, my heart pounding but my expression calm. Maybe it's not random, I said softly. Maybe someone knows something you didn't want them to know. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot I'd kept ready. A text from her to Jasper, the one where she'd said, * you're bad for me, but I like it. * I slid the phone across the coffee table, watching her face as she read it. The color drained from her cheeks, her breath catching. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling. "How did you?" "I know everything," I said, my voice low and steady. "The pad, the loft, Elise, the messages, Jasper. I've known for weeks." She stared at me, tears welling in her eyes. "I can explain," she said, her voice barely audible. "Explain." I stood up, my anger finally breaking through. "You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around with him, in our bakery, in our life. What's there to explain?" "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said, her voice cracking. "It was a mistake. I was lonely and you were always working, and Jasper, he was just there. It didn't mean anything." I laughed, a bitter sound that made her flinch. "Didn't mean anything? You threw away our marriage for something that didn't mean anything." "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, Daniel. I swear, I was going to end it." I stood up, pacing the room to keep from exploding. "You love me? You have a funny way of showing it. You and Jasper turned our life into a lie. And now you're paying for it." Her eyes widened. You did this? The rumors, the flyers, the article." I didn't answer, but my silence was enough. She stood up, her hands shaking. "How could you? You're destroying everything I've worked for. And you destroyed everything we had." I shot back. "You made your choice, Elise. Now you live with it." She sank back onto the couch, sobbing. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, can we fix this? For the kids." The mention of Mia and Ethan hit me like a punch, but I steeled myself. The kids deserve better than a mother who lies to their father. And I deserve better than a wife who betrays me. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice small. I leaned in close, my voice cold. "I'm not done yet. Jasper's going to lose more than a few clients. And you? You're going to lose the bakery, your reputation, everything. You'll feel what it's like to have nothing left." I walked out, leaving her crying on the couch. The next day, I filed for divorce, citing infidelity, and sent the security footage to Jasper's remaining clients, ensuring his career would never recover. The bakery closed within a month, buried under debt and bad press. Elise moved out and I got custody of the kids. The house felt empty without her, but it was a clean kind of empty, free of lies. My revenge was complete, and though it didn't heal the hole in my heart, it gave me something else. Closure. I rebuilt my life, one honest piece at a time, while Elise and Jasper faded into the wreckage of their own making.